I am Leah Rhodes, one of the co-founders of Camilla Midwifery Services. I am a CPM LM, and we are so excited for another installment of our health during pregnancy series.
And I'm Kamika Brown. I am also a co-owner of Camilla Midwifery. And today we have Emma Gould with us, who just got married a couple of months ago, which is awesome. Congratulations. We met Emma while we were all kind of students. We decided to come together and study quite often. She also has incredible knowledge on herbalism, and she's trying to apply that to pregnancy and postpartum. So we're going to ask her a couple of questions here about blood building all the way through to the postpartum. Do you mind introducing yourself a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Emma. I am also a midwifery student coming down the home stretch. I have been interested in plants for probably the better part of 2 decades. And just started like researching and learning a lot about plants, to the point where I was like, okay, like I can start like making medicine with these and sort of like recommending things in confidence. So I call myself a folk herbalist because my knowledge comes from like lived life experience and learning under other more experienced herbalists. Yeah, and I just really have a passion for like women and childbirth and herbs that specifically help them. So I know a lot about it.
Nice. So specifically today, we're going to be talking about anemia in pregnancy. Just as a general rule, women are usually on the anemic side. And so most people end up starting their pregnancy, even pre-pregnant, starting that journey, on the anemic side. So if you were looking to get pregnant, what are some things, herbal supplements you could do to kind of bridge that gap to get your body kind of prepped and ready for pregnancy?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. So there are a lot of herbs that we can take that are sort of like blood builders. One thing I sort of want to preface with anemia is I'm starting to see it's not so much that like people are deficient in iron, it's that our bodies don't have what it needs to assimilate iron into our blood. Because if you look at most food products on the market these days, they're all fortified with iron.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's kind of like if we have all this iron in our diets, why is everyone anemic? And or why is it showing on their blood work in hemoglobin that like the iron is not binding with their blood? So a lot of us actually have an incredible amount of iron stored in our livers, sometimes even to the point of being slightly toxic. And so I think initially for women who are looking to get pregnant, it's good to take herbs that can sort of help loosen up that iron that's stored in our organs so that it can bind with um, like our platelets and our hemoglobin. Um, so I really recommend stinging nettle. It's like an incredible herb for women and just humans in general. It is really high in iron. It's also really high in vitamin C, which is really important for us to like assimilate iron. And it's also really high in like all of those trace minerals that so many people are deficient in. Magnesium, phosphate, selenium, that kind of thing. The stinging nettle is like great for that. Yellow dock is another plant that's really great for helping us assimilate the iron that's already in our bodies. Um, so yellow dock is this like beautiful plant. It grows this really long root that goes deep in the earth, and it tends to grow in soil that is iron rich, but it contains a lot of these phytocompounds. So they're like chemicals that plants produce that allow us to break down, digest, and absorb um, the different minerals and stuff. So a lot of times people will recommend like, oh, you should take an iron supplement, um, which is usually just ferrous iron, which is like metal, um, which our bodies are not really meant to absorb that kind of iron, which is also what all of like the food products are supplemented with is ferrous iron. So yellow dock helps our body like release the iron that's stored particularly in our liver, but in other organs as well. And then it has these phytocompounds that allow us to like bind it to our blood cells. And then dandelion and burdock root are also a lot of root plants. Really great also for increasing iron in our blood. And then one of my favorites is plantain, which is, it's not a banana. It's it's this little green plant that pretty much grows in everybody's lawn, which is awesome. So I love that, you know, women can just go outside and pick it from their yards and consume it fresh. It is an herb that is specific for anemia, so it can be really helpful with raising those iron levels.
I didn't know that. That's great. So along those same lines, if you're doing these things, trying to build for blood, build your blood, increase your iron stores in your blood, can you overdo it with any of those? Like, should you be like, well, that's enough, I need to stop?
Yeah, so obviously you can have too much iron in your blood. And a lot of times that's what happens with people who are taking an iron supplement. Is that you can just have a buildup of too much of this iron. And that's kind of why I recommend for people who are trying to get pregnant and blood building that we take things that aren't necessarily like an iron supplement, but they're helping our bodies have and build the components that's required to assimilate iron. So a lot of times, like with these plants, you know, there's always like too much of a good thing. But I like to say that like these plants, it's really hard to have too much of them, especially because you're getting like this whole plant source of nutrients. So it's like not just iron, like you're getting other vitamins and minerals that are going to help the body in other ways and help them use those minerals in a way that's productive. Whereas like if you're just taking an iron supplement, your body's like, okay, well, here's all this iron. Like, well, what do I do with all this? There are a few things that can be like contraindicated, not necessarily like you're overdoing it with the iron, but and I think we'll talk about them a little later, but some of these plants can be contraindicated if you have different.
So around 28 weeks, you know, this is a typical routine time to check in on how the hemoglobin and hematocrit are looking at that time. We generally assume, especially if that pregnant person came in on the lower end, that during that testing time, we'll see a significant drop as that blood volume expansion is happening. So are there herbs that we can use throughout that time before that test comes on so that we can make sure it stays in a nice range?
Yeah, so all of those plants that I listed before are great to continue taking in pregnancy. They can help us maintain those healthy like vitamin mineral levels that we need and can really prevent us from like presenting as anemic. If so, like a lot of times in midwifery, we do like initial blood work and, you know, we can see that somebody at that point is adequate, but they might be on like the low end of adequate. So you can sort of predict that like if we're not starting to supplement or using things that at 28 weeks, we're probably going to be anemic. So again, all of those plants are great. Another thing that's like really great, it's not necessarily an herb, but it's blackstrap molasses is like super high in iron. And it doesn't like constipate quite the same way that like a typical iron supplement will. So like one of my favorite things to do is to make a decoction. So that's like a strong, strong tea of like burdock, dandelion, yellow dock. And then you mix that with blackstrap molasses and sort of create this like thick syrup. And women can just take like a tablespoon or two of that a day. And that should be really helpful in helping them like elevate and maintain like healthy blood iron levels.
Nice. Sometimes we run across clients that have low platelet count or thrombocytopenia.
Mhm.
And we're going to be focusing mainly on gestational thrombocytopenia, and that can
Mhm.
be something that can affect clotting, especially postpartum and whatnot. So, what are some different herbs or plants that would be helpful in building or maintaining a platelet count?
So yeah, for that, I think like the go-to in a lot of midwifery practices is to recommend papaya leaf extract, and that is like a really amazing plant and herb that can help elevate your platelet levels. And that's not to be confused with papaya enzyme, which is another thing that midwives will often recommend for heartburn. So, like the enzyme, the extract from the leaf are different. But really, just the whole papaya can be really beneficial for elevating platelets. So, like women can eat the fruit, they can drink papaya juice, they can make tea with the leaves. It's all really beneficial. Another plant is aloe. You can't see it. I'm sitting next to my big mama aloe. There we go. um,
Nice.
yeah, yeah, she's huge. Um, so aloe is another really good plant for like elevating platelets, and it's great because like aloe juice is like really widely available in stores, or at like Hispanic bodegas. So yeah, aloe is good. Again, stinging nettles. I have this really incredible story about stinging nettle helping with low platelets. One of the other midwife assistants that I used to work with, her daughter just started getting all of these like crazy bruises. Like she would just like sit down on a chair and then have like bruises on the back of her legs. And she went in and got blood work, and her platelets were like she had these really low platelets. They were thinking it was like something viral. They hospitalized her. And Loria and we like made this really strong stinging nettle infusion. And we were just bringing it to the hospital like every day. And we were like, drink this, drink this, drink this. And the doctors, they were doing her blood work daily. And they said that they had never seen somebody whose platelets came up that quickly.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously,
Wow.
I think hers was like a virus that was causing that. And we like thrombocytopenia can occur for like different reasons in pregnancy. But yeah, nettles are like a really super beneficial herb for helping low platelet levels. Also just eating things that are, high in iron and blood building. So like liver and different organ meats, of course, is great for like building blood. And then one of the things I always recommend, especially for building blood, and even I would even say that this might be like the first line of defense if someone is presenting anemic, is chlorophyll.
Hmm.
So we already sort of talked about how a lot of people actually do have quite a bit of iron in their bodies, but it's just been stored and it's not like binding to their blood cells. So I've actually seen a lot of women who, like, if you start supplementing with chlorophyll, and I am not like a hematologist, so I'm gonna like butcher the terminology here, but I think like in your blood cells, you have to have it's like certain oxygen or like magnesium molecules on the blood that act as almost like a magnet for iron. Like iron is like negative, and whatever oxygen or magnesium you need on your blood cells is positive. Um, and so chlorophyll sort of like provides the molecule with a better structure to bind to iron. So sometimes if somebody is, you know, maybe like borderline anemic, or you can just tell they're low and they're going to be even lower later, I would recommend chlorophyll first and kind of like seeing if that helps helps iron to like assimilate to blood. And then chlorella is also awesome, but that's because it's also really high in chlorophyll. Chlorella is an algae.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you'll see it, it's like really super duper green. There are a couple things that are like helpful for low platelets, but that would be contraindicated in pregnancy. And those would be like turmeric, feverfew, high doses of like garlic and ginger, ginseng, and willow bark. And those plants tend to be blood thinning and anti-inflammatory. So for women who have low platelets, like we really don't want to like thin their blood out anymore, especially if at the 28-week mark, you know, their levels are sort of presenting. Those are like plants to avoid.
What would you consider a high dose of garlic or ginger? Because these are things that a lot of us use for cooking, you know.
I think when you like cook with it, you know, at the same time, like it's sort of the same as like you're getting like a whole food source. So I think it's fine to cook with. It's oftentimes like people who are supplementing it. So
Gotcha.
like you can get, yeah, I think cooking with garlic and ginger should be fine because you're sort of assimilating it with other foods. A lot of times the heat from cooking oftentimes like breaks down and makes plants not quite as potent. So it's like if you're taking capsules of garlic or capsules of ginger, or maybe like somebody is, you know, using tablespoons at a time. I imagine like tablespoons of garlic would really upset your stomach. But yeah, I would say
Yeah.
just like over supplementing. So like if somebody, for example, if you had like a client who was sort of presenting low platelets and they're like, oh yeah, like I looked it up and you know, I've been supplementing like garlic or ginger capsules, and it's like, maybe you should like ease off on that because it can actually be contraindicated.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So a lot of like the herbs that are really going to like boost iron levels, they work best when they're combined with sort of like whole food sources of iron. So like organ meats, beets, um, all those blood building herbs that we talked about. And then there's another herb that's really great for also just building blood in general, but specifically for boosting hemoglobin levels.
I've recently been on a moringa kick.
Oh yeah.
I drink I don't know, you know, a cup, whatever that is, or 12 ounces. Most days in the morning, I'll have that.
Mhm.
It's really great.
Are you noticing like any effects from it? You're just like
I,
feeling.
yeah, I definitely feel a lot more energy and not like caffeinated energy, just like
Yeah,
not,
you just got like more vitality.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, moringa's awesome. It is also like a little mucilaginous, a little slippery, but yeah, it's like for anyone who like just looks really depleted. Like, you know, sometimes you see a client and you're like, that person looks anemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, moringa can be great for that because not only is it like hemoglobin boosting, but it's like I tend to shy away from like the like superfoods like word because you know those
Yeah.
are made up by marketing companies. But yeah, like moringa is like so full of all these different nutrients that our bodies just crave that yeah, people can sort of start taking it on a daily basis and be like, wow, like I
Yeah.
feel good. And I'm like, actually, you feel normal. That's what
Yeah.
normal.
Surprise.
Yeah.
I love that you're directing people more towards the whole foods version of these supplementations, letting them know that everything is really out in their backyard so that they can
Yeah.
go find it. Are there anything that would be, I know this is a little bit off topic, but that would help varicosities since we're talking about blood and veins and such?
Yes. Yeah. Varicosities. And then for like anyone who doesn't know, varicosities are like when your veins, when the walls of your veins and capillaries, specifically like your smaller ones, sort of start to collapse, and they can form these like very painful, like distended veins. So, and that happens a lot in pregnancy because like the increased blood volume and then the increased weight, women are gaining weight because they're growing a baby. Gaining weight is healthy. We want you to gain weight. But that can put like added pressure on veins, which can then cause them to pull. Also, in pregnancy, our bodies are producing really high levels of progesterone to like sustain pregnancies. And progesterone is a smooth muscle relaxer. So that can like sort of soften the walls of our veins. And then like decreased muscle activity. So a lot of times in early pregnancy, we're not feeling good, we're feeling low energy, we don't move a lot. And then in like the third trimester, a lot of times we're just feeling so big that we don't want to move. But like movement and like muscle contractions is what like moves our blood. So if we're stagnant, it can cause like stagnation and then pooling of blood in certain areas, which will then continue to like distend vein. And also, a lot of people can have like an inherited disposition towards varicosities. So like if their mothers or their grandmothers had it, there's a good chance that like your veins are also probably not going to be super strong. So I think that like if you know that you might have like a familial tendency towards that, that starting to take things even before you get pregnant can really help. So like vitamin C and any of like the related bioflavonoids, which bioflavonoids are again like compounds that a lot of plants create that are high in vitamin C and help your body assimilate it. So yeah, supplementing with like vitamin C and then other things that are high in vitamin C, like buckwheat, again, stinging nettle. I just let everybody should have stinging nettle like all the time. Everybody should be consuming it. Rose hips are another like really high vitamin C. Citrus, uh, hibiscus flower, and then particularly for us, because we live here in the eastern, I was about to say the Northeast, but we're not in the Northeast. We're in the Southeast. But yeah, around here, there's a plant called sumac. It's a tree that grows, and you see it a lot of the times along the side of the road. And it's got sort of like these like cone-like clusters of berries. And that is like an incredible source of vitamin C. I don't think that they have like identified a plant that produces a higher vitamin C content than sumac. You can
Wow.
fact check me on that, but like, yeah, it's super high. So you can just gather it around here. So vitamin C is really good for that. Alliums, which are like anything in the garlic onion family, is really good for like strengthening veins. And then if somebody is like particularly predisposed or like maybe in a previous pregnancy, they had really bad varicosities, we can recommend supplements like lecithin, vitamin E. Those are really great for repairing already blown out veins and preventing new ones. But then one of the things I find is like most helpful for veins, we're thinking like really astringent things because we want the veins to, instead of like being all like loose and soft, we want them to like tighten up, harden up. Is grape leaves. So grape leaves are like incredibly astringent. And it's great because it's another whole food thing. Like you can cook with them, you can make dolmas, you can saute them and like eat them like a sauteed green. You can also make grape leaf vinegar. So you would take like fresh grape leaves and pour vinegar over them and like infuse it for a couple weeks and then strain it out. But you've got like those helpful plant compounds in the vinegar, and then you can cook with it. You can even use it as a liniment and like rub it on varicosities. And it can be really helpful. And
Very
just
cool.
remember that when you're rubbing a liniment on varicosities, you always want to rub towards the heart, like when pushing blood back towards the heart and not away. Another one that's really common is butcher's broom. I know a lot of midwives will recommend that, and butcher's broom is great because it's angiogenic, which means that it inspires vein growth. So like it inspires the growth of like capillaries and veins. And it's also really high in silica, which is a mineral that our bodies use to create strong like blood pathway walls.
Nice.
Very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, talking about all of these different herbs that we can try to get into our diets, are there certain ways that work better for certain plants in the way that we prepare them? I know you were talking about tinctures and decoctions. Are there some other versions?
Yeah, so if you're working with roots, so like yellow dock root, burdock root, dandelion, those are all great for boosting iron in the blood. Roots often like it's a tougher, thicker part of the plant than just like a leaf or stem. So roots often like I talk about like infusions or teas or decoctions. So a tea is something that you would just steep the herbs for, like 10 or 20 minutes, and then you can drink it. An infusion is usually the plants have been steeped for several hours. I like to recommend like 8 to 12 hours. And that's to just give enough time to like extract the medicinal properties from the plants. And so for roots like yellow dock, a decoction is what you want. And that's something that has been simmered for a long period of time because we're really trying to like soften up those like really fibrous roots and extract like the medicinal compound out of it. And then tinctures are like alcoholic extractions. So we will pour alcohol over plants and usually you let that sit for several weeks. I think, people say 2 to 3 weeks. I like to just pour alcohol over my stuff and then forget about it until I need it. Like mine are like steeped for like months and months. But yeah, you should usually plan on at least like yeah, yeah, right. You're like, oh, this thing that I had started 6 months ago. But yeah, 2 to 3 weeks is usually like the minimum. That's what they say for like um for like using a cold extraction in alcohol or vinegar.
Are all of these safe herbs to, take with our typical prenatal vitamins, any supplements that we may be taking?
I say that like herbs you can really take like anytime, and that is because it's like a whole plant source of these like vitamins and minerals. So it's coming with all of those different enzymes and the different like flavonoids and like all these different compounds that help our bodies like digest and absorb them. If you have someone who is like truly presenting as anemic and we're sort of using either like an iron supplement or like the decoction I was talking about earlier mixed with molasses, we know that calcium blocks iron absorption. So if she's taking like a prenatal vitamin or calcium supplement, we would want to counsel her and like take these separately, like take one in the morning and take so that she's able to like really absorb that iron and it's not being used by her. And then most of these herbs, I sort of recommend starting your day off with them, especially because like a lot of us, like our favorite thing to do in the morning is have a cup of coffee, which is, I love coffee. But coffee, yeah, coffee and a lot of the things that we consume throughout the day is actually very stripping. So it'll strip our bodies, especially caffeine. will like strip vitamins and minerals out of our body. So I usually recommend it's like maybe start your day off with these herbs. Like before you have a cup of coffee, have a cup of tea that you infused the night before. So you can really like get that in your body, get it absorbed, get it going, and then have your coffee. But like give your body a chance to like absorb these vitamins and minerals.
Definitely. So how long in between taking whatever supplement they've chosen till they can have that first cup of coffee or whatever they might be drinking?
I would usually give it, I would say ideally you'd give it like a half an hour minimum um, to sort of
Okay.
like get your digestive, let it sort of like start to process through your body. I, but I think as long as like you're sort of like daily consuming, and a lot of times like with these herbs, I say like consume throughout the day. Like just keep chopping yourself up because I'll be like, I've got my tea in one hand and my coffee in the other, and I'm like, like I'm double dipping because I love my coffee. But if you wanted to be really strict about it, I'd say give yourself at least 30 minutes between like consuming your herbs and then having coffee, but also just consume your herbs throughout the day because like you'll have your coffee, it'll run through you, and then, continue nourishing yourself.
So in postpartum, there is a normal amount of bleeding that's to be expected, just as your uterus goes back down to its normal size, the wound where the placenta was, which is, roughly about the size of a dinner plate, which is quite large, as that kind of heals and goes down. Sometimes there's a laceration on the perineum. So what about supporting blood building during the postpartum after you've lost blood, as you're healing?
So, yeah, I mean, every woman bleeds after giving birth. And I would say, like, in the immediate postpartum, us as midwives, or just like mothers in general, should have chlorophyll on hand. Chlorophyll is sort of like an immediate blood builder. So that's like a really great thing. I used to work for this midwife, and her protocol was to have a glass of chlorophyll and coconut water. And it was like every mom, as soon as that placenta comes out, like you get some. Um, so yeah, like chlorophyll can be really helpful. And then all of the same herbs that we've just been talking about as blood builders, like stinging nettle, alfalfa, plantain, all of those you can continue using in the postpartum. It's kind of like how they say, like, you should keep taking your prenatal vitamin in the postpartum. Keep using all those plants. Like, none of them are contraindicated in the postpartum or for breastfeeding.
Okay, good. That was my next question, was what's safe for breastfeeding? So that's good to know. Yeah.
Yeah. All of those are safe in breastfeeding. A lot of times when we make or as an herbalist, a lot of times when I like make a blend for people, I will add herbs that are tasty. So, because I feel like a lot of times like taste has a lot to do with it. Like if it's palatable and you like it, you're more likely to drink it.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so one of
Right.
like those
Mhm.
tasty herbs that I put in will be like a mint or like a mint family plant. And mint is contraindicated for
Hmm.
breastfeeding. It will dry up breast milk,
Mhm.
and pretty quickly. Um, so yeah, I really like if you've given someone like a blend in pregnancy that includes mint, just make sure that you're like, don't take that when you're breastfeeding. And also really tell them to avoid mint essential oil because that is like 100 times more concentrated.
Right.
Like I'm sure you could drink a cup of
Mhm.
tea in while you're breastfeeding and you'd be fine. But you could use like a drop of peppermint essential oil, and that would be like being exposed to like 100 cups of mint.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
So
I'm glad you said that. Could you just touch a little bit on concentrations? Like I know we've talked about different ways of preparing, and we've got teas and tinctures and essential oils, which most of us will not be making. Um, and so just touch a little bit on like how concentrated each of those preparations are.
so a tea is pretty not concentrated. Like you're only steeping it for, 10 or 20 minutes. And for some plants, you do want a tea. So like, for example, in the mint family, there's a plant called horehound, which can be very helpful for like upper respiratory, like if you have a cough that you just can't shake, horehound is great for that. But you would only want to make a tea out of it because it is really alkaline and it's very strong. So if you were to like infuse it for like 8 to 12 hours, it would actually be so strong that it would like upset your stomach. So yeah, some plants, it's like we're only going to extract it for like a little bit of time. An infusion is basically just like a long steeped tea. So that is, you pour boiling water over your plants and then you just let it sit for several hours. It'll cool off, it'll come to room temperature, that's fine. And we just want a longer period of time for all of these vitamins and minerals to sort of like come out of the plants and into the water. If we remember like 7th grade chemistry, which I don't remember a ton of, but they often talk about like diffusion, and that is like minerals and molecules will always flow to like where there is less of it. So like if you have like super concentrated minerals in a plant and you pour water over it, there's going to be less of those minerals in the water. So it's all going to like flow from the plant into the water, but we just have to give it time. We have to give time for like those plant cell walls to break down in order to allow like those compounds to extract. And then a decoction is it's a little more intense. So a decoction is like a preparation that's been simmered for quite some time. So like for roots, for example, I recommend simmering them for like a minimum of like 20 minutes. And that's not like a rolling boil. That's like you turn it down and you get like the little bubbles and it's like simmering. And then you would let it sit for several hours, like an infusion. So you're going to get like a much stronger preparation. But then a decoction is you strain, so you've simmered it, you let it infuse, then you strain out the plant matter and you would simmer it again and you're reducing it. So you're reducing the amount of liquid so that the solution that you're left with is more concentrated with your medicinal compounds. And it'll still be pretty watery, a lot of it, because it is water and these plants aren't sticky and have a lot of sugars in them. But a lot of times you can use decoction as like the base for a syrup. So like if you're making a decoction of these roots, like the yellow dock, the dandelion, burdock, a lot of times roots are very bitter. But like we get this really concentrated solution and it's not going to be super palatable. Like people are like, oh, it tastes awful. So then I'm like, yeah, add the molasses or add honey to it, which will make it like a syrup. I did for a second just want to get up on my soapbox about essential oils. Essential oils have definitely been a big fad, especially in sort of like the out of hospital home birthing world. I know a lot of our clients love those essential oils. And I just want to really caution people against the use of essential oils in pregnancy and especially in the postpartum. So essential oils are like hundreds of times more concentrated than the plants that they come from. And as like humans and our like organic bodies, we're not meant to come into contact with something that is that. So I know a lot of times you hear about like essential oils like direct on the skin can burn you. And it's like, it's true because it's like a very, very concentrated thing. So that's just sort of like food for thought. But then especially in the postpartum, especially in those first 2 weeks where it's so important for moms to like establish that breastfeeding relationship, a lot of what the baby is relying on, since they can't like see all that well, is a sense of smell. And, we always tell them, like, don't bathe your baby right away because the baby has the amniotic fluid on their hands and they'll like touch the breast. And the smell of the amniotic fluid is kind of like what attracts them to the breast and the nipple and really helps them start a strong breastfeeding relationship. And so if anyone is like using essential oils on themselves or on their baby, it can really mess up like the beginning stages of pregnancy. So that was just nice. So thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I think essential oils are great
No,
when they're
I
diffused and they
really
smell
support
good.
that greatly. I try to talk to moms about not really using scented soaps on their breast, before, in that, first couple of weeks. You can of course wash yourself, but try not to use things that are going to cover up those smells that attract baby
Yeah.
to that
Mhm.
nursing.
Yeah, and I'd say oftentimes we have a lot of clients who sort of like swear by the healing properties of essential oils, and I'm not one to doubt that. I'm sure they have pretty, actually very intense effects sometimes. But it's kind of like, as humans, we weren't always like squishing the oils out of plants. It's very difficult to do. So and then just have a personal story of breastfeeding my daughter. And it was sort of like the beginning of like my hippie crunchy, oh my God, there's chemicals and everything. I gotta make my own everything. So I was making my own toothpaste and I was putting peppermint essential oil in it. Because everyone loves minty toothpaste. And my breast milk like completely dried up and my breast mass like reduced like by a visible um and I was really sort of like perplexed. I was like, what's going on here? And then I found out that mint
Yeah.
is contraindicated for breastfeeding. And I was like, wow, I was putting like super concentrated mint essential oil in my mouth.
Yeah.
That's incredible that the herbs can be so strong to affect our bodies in that way.
I think it's really
Okay.
important to note that yes, these things are natural and we find them everywhere. It doesn't mean that we can use them indiscriminately. Same what goes with
Mhm.
essential oils. Like, yeah, they're great and they have their place. But it doesn't mean that we can't use them without caution. So,
Yeah, yeah, and like all of these
Right.
plants, like, I was saying none of them are like really contraindicated in pregnancy, but you can definitely overdo it with anything. Like if you eat too many carrots, like
right.
you can have a buildup of like beta carotene in your body, and that can be
You
not.
could turn orange.
Yeah, no, yeah, you could
Yeah.
definitely turn orange. Like if you ate enough of them. I remember that from the Magic School Bus. Arnold ate too many
Yeah.
orange carrot snacks. Um, but yeah, like yeah, you can definitely have too much of a good thing. I think with a lot of these herbs, it's hard to overdose on them. Um, there was a couple contraindications. I know like yellow dock and burdock, um, they are like diuretics, and so they can be contraindicated if somebody already has low. Um, So yeah, if someone already has low platelets, then it's like let's focus more on like stinging nettle, like chlorophyll, plantain. But yeah, just remember that like yellow dock and burdock can in a person who has healthy platelet levels, it probably should be fine. But if someone is presenting with low platelets, like below 140.
Right.
So, since we're talking about how potent these herbs can be, are any of them useful in that immediate postpartum in particular?
Yeah, and so these would be sort of herbs that um there's one herb that I can think of that women would be fine to sort of like take throughout pregnancy, which could be really helpful in preventing um, specifically hemorrhage. So, of course, if we're not anemic, if we've got like really good blood levels, you're less likely to hemorrhage.
Mhm.
But blessed thistle is a great herb, safe for pregnancy. It's also like a really wonderful liver tonic. So, for like women who maybe have like cholestasis or worried about preeclampsia, blessed thistle can be a great thing to take because it's just like improving the function of your liver. It also is really helpful with milk production because it stimulates blood flow to the mammary glands. But for preventing hemorrhage, blessed thistle has these incredible hemostatic properties, which means like it causes like clotting and less bleeding. So if a woman is taking that through pregnancy, she's going to get all these added benefits of like a healthy liver. She's going to have great milk production, and she might not bleed as much. So that's something women can take throughout pregnancy. And then there are some herbs that like we as midwives sort of keep on hand for emergencies, for bleeding emergencies. One of them that I know you guys are probably pretty familiar with is shepherd's purse. Shepherd's purse also has like hemostatic properties. So it's going to like really help your blood clot up very quickly. And then another herb that is really helpful is yarrow. So yarrow has these like incredible like stop bleeding properties. Even so much so that like fun history fact. The Roman Empire used to grow like acres and acres and acres of yarrow because you know they're invading and they're in war all the time, and yarrow can stop bleeding like incredibly. So a lot of times yarrow grows like wild and native around Virginia and along much of like the eastern corridor. So like if you're out and about and you get a cut, you can always like grab some yarrow, or even if like you get a cut and it's like maybe you bound it up and a couple hours later it's like still sort of profusely bleeding. You can just get some yarrow like leaf stem flour and crush it up and just like stuff it in there, and it will cut off the bleeding pretty immediately.
Wow.
The Roman, I remember there's this one, another history fact with like the Romans was that they would not advance to like the next battlefield until like the stores of yarrow caught up.
Wow.
So like that, yeah, that's how like amazing it is for stopping bleeding. It's especially good for like deep wounds, deep bleeds, or like for women who are having a hemorrhage in the postpartum, you know, we're talking like a deep internal bleed. So it can be very helpful for that. Shepherd's purse and yarrow that we would want to keep tinctures on hand to administer to women who we notice are bleeding a little too.
That's really interesting, actually. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, and it was because I was going through like different herbs that are like, you know, and I'm like, oh yeah, we always use like shepherd's purse or we use angelica. And then I was like, why don't we use yarrow?
Yeah, I know. I don't know why.
Yeah, and then I sort of went, I have like these like old midwifery herb books that people have like gifted me. So I'm like kind of like flipping
Nice.
through them beforehand, and I was like, yeah, and all of them it's like yarrow, shepherd's purse. And I'm like,
Yeah.
not a lot of mention of like actually like angelica or like the other stuff.
Interesting. I wonder if it's because it's hard. I don't know that I don't know that I've looked for it either, but to buy it as a tincture, you know, from like Wish Garden or wherever, you know, I don't
I
know.
think herbal pharmacy carries yarrow.
Yarrow. Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also like, well, a lot of these plants, yeah, like some of them are hard. Like, so like I love plantain. But like it's really hard to find like bulk dried plantain or like plantain tincture or plantain oil because it is just like such a weed. Like it's just growing all over like people's grass and stuff like that. So I think it's just like so common that a lot of people overlook it. But like in traditional herbalism, plantain is like a specific listed for anemia. So you know everyone's always like, yeah, doc nettle, but I'm like, but plantain.
Plantain.
Also, plantain is a specific herb listed for failure to thrive. So, yeah, it's like incredible in terms of like the nutrient content that it offers and in like helping the bodies like start to assimilate like the nutrients that it needs. So yeah, if you ever have like an infant that is like really low on weight, failure to thrive, I would definitely recommend like making an infusion of plantain and sort of like trying to get them like take it through a bottle. I don't think an infant would love having like an alcoholic tincture in its mouth. You could do glycerin. You could do like a glycerin extraction, which would be sweet.
I
But yeah,
use plantain primarily in like topical salves and things like that. I've never thought
Yeah.
about using it internally. That's great.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, so it's interesting. Like I know a lot of people know that like plantain is good for like bug bites. So it does, like it has these compounds. I can't remember exactly what like the specific compound's name is, but like it's what helps inflammation on the skin, and it's like mildly analgesic, so it'll like stop pain and redness. But one of the ways that you can make that compound more effective is by chewing up plantain, because like the
Yeah.
spit in your mouth like activates this compound and makes it more strong. Um, so it's like one of my favorite things to do is like, well, when a little kid like gets a bee sting, they run up to you and they're screaming. And I'm like, okay, let's find some plantain. And then I'm like, you chew it up in your mouth because we're gonna chew it up, we're gonna put it on here. But while they're chewing the plantain, they can't scream. So I'm like,
That's a
let's bring
great
it
tip.
down.
Oh, wow. That's funny.
Herbalist, her name is Robin Rose Bennett, and she has a book, I think it's called like The Healing Gift of Herbs.
Yeah.
But she has like this entire chapter about plantain and like everything it's good for. Yeah, and a lot of times like people recommend like picking it and eating it fresh in salads. Like you could just add the leaves to your salads and stuff. So like just having it, regular, it's like a regular whole food plant. It's what we call like a nutritive herb, which means you can consume it daily and you're not going to have any issues. Sort of like stinging nettles, like another thing. Allergic, day every day.
Nice.
So while taking any of these herbs in the postpartum, how long should we expect to be kind of monitoring these things to make sure that they're actually working?
Um, so that really depends on like on a person to person basis, like how have our clients been eating? How's their diet been? Have they been supplementing? Have they not been supplementing? How much did they bleed? So it's really much like the amount of time that it takes like blood levels to sort of build back up to what's considered normal is a huge range. I think it's something from like it could be 4 weeks all the way up to like over 20 weeks. But if we are sort of taking these blood building herbs, all the herbs that we were taking in pregnancy, you can continue taking in the postpartum, you'll probably see blood levels come up a whole lot faster than somebody who's not using.
Nice.
Before we close out, I just wanted to give a little disclosure. If you are planning on searching for any of these herbs in your yard or in a friend's yard, please make sure that it is somewhere that there are no pesticides being sprayed prior to your collection. Also, making sure that you know what you're picking before you are taking it in home to dry and use. So if you're not reaching out to an herbalist, make sure you have something along this line specific to your area, just so you know that you're looking at the right product before consuming, please. Always reach out to an herbalist that is nearest you. I'm sure they will help you with any questions.
Wash your plants too before you prepare them.
That's right, because it may not have been sprayed by chemicals, but it could have been sprayed by someone's dog.
Yeah.
Right.
Or bird or wild animal.
Yeah, yeah, or like anything really. Yeah, and then just in my foraging classes, I always tell people never ever put anything in your mouth that you're not like 110% sure of what it is. There's a lot of lookalikes out there, some of them which may just maybe not taste good, and some of them which can have very harmful effects. So just be like 110% sure. You can always, and don't rely on like the Google image search. That's
Right.
reliable.
Well, Emma, thank you so much for joining us and sharing some of your knowledge, a little bit of your knowledge with us about blood building in pregnancy and postpartum. If you want to promote your business just a little bit, tell us, what you offer and do and all that.
Sure, yeah. I have like a really low key, very side hustle. Oh, yep, Kamika's got some
There
of the
she's got,
teas.
yep.
Yeah, I produce like some tinctures and herbal different things, salves, teas, tinctures, oils. Um, I have a website. It's motherroot.love. Um, Nothing is for sale on my website because I haven't figured that part out yet. But what I mainly love to do is to do individual consultations with people. Because, there's not like a one size fit all remedy for people. You really have to take into account like their lifestyle, what's going on with them. And I love to like create and make individual remedies. So people can contact me through my website. I specialize in like herbs for women, fertility preparation, and pregnancy and postpartum.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, and we look forward to more informative videos with you about other topics. So thanks so much.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. All
Thank you.
right. Bye.
Bye.